Hi, this is Lakhi Singh, the property fixer, here to fix you and help you grow your property and your business affairs to the next level. So if you're looking for knowledge and insights about how to get involved in property, solve your problems about scalability in your property business, then do watch our 20-minute clips. We've taken them from hundreds and, thousands of videos that we've taken over the last 6 months, and we've broken them into simple chunks which can make them useful for you. So do watch and do subscribe to our YouTube channel underneath as well.
Or make a go of the situation. So I think some of the issues are also with the mindset of some of the people that are actually in these situations, because if you can't get finance and it's had an effect on your credit record, you're going to have an issue. You may have to look at other alternatives. That's why we set up this group, which is to maybe change your mindset. You may have to sell something that you weren't looking to sell before because the market doesn't allow you to get finance easily because of your credit file. You may also want to consider bridging, although it's expensive. If you've still got good credit file and we've approached a friendly lender, which is a private lender, they'll still lend you money at a higher rate, but they may be able to solve the problem. So one solution could be to sell something. The other solution could be to use bridging finance. A third solution could be that there's access to business loans or personal loans that you can get, which may be at a good rate, and you may not realize you can do asset-backed lending for your business as well. Mm-hmm. So I think you've got to really think out the box, because anything that was out there that was traditionally done in the last 5 or 10 years, half of those solutions now are not workable. You can't just go out and do a normal mortgage anymore. You really got to be on your feet. You've got to be thinking, how do I actually have all my ducks lined up? You can't really have enough ducks lined up in this market because there's lots of unknowns and lots of variables.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You're saying, it's I think something that we could give to Bob Singh, and Bob Singh has obviously just joined us, so it'd be excellent, I think, for you to put these two parties together for him to give them best advice. Interesting, Julie said about the fact that she really is a bit of a bridge between tenants who can't pay, not won't pay, but can't pay. And we've got another one of our group members, Mr. Mohsin, and there are a few people like that out there who are trying to help, or at least assist people in getting rehoused. And I think that's going to be a big issue, whether interest rates go up or not. I mean, where the government is at the moment. I think there was someone the other day, a Manchester United footballer, I think, who made a particular point about food and hunger, and the fact the government had to do more in providing food vouchers, possibly, or food for families who are going to go into financial hardship. And Mohsin mentioned that about 8 million families were a paycheck away from becoming homeless. Now, what do you have to say to what Julie does? Because it's admirable, because there's not many people who are, again, going to the nature of what Julie does. It seems that she's got this tenable nature of finding the gaps and carving out something that's unique and trying to solve things, which is always the Lakhi Singh way, because you're a fixer and you're a troubleshooter and a problem solver. So what do you have to say to what Julie does? And can you see there is it's going to be a broader demand for this? And do you feel that you would have some common interest with Julie in assisting people who are going to suffer as a consequence, not even of the financial, that just because the government's going to run out of money, they're not going to have any more money to give. There's not going to be any more, furloughs, and the bounce backs will finish, and Sybils will finish, and then people will be left with no businesses overnight without any financial support, and then they're not going to be able to afford, like Julie says, they will not be able to pay their rent. It's not that they are not paying, they cannot afford to pay. So do you feel there's an angle there where you could probably tap into Julie's abilities and work with other people on this platform we've got to help people who are going to be in financial hardship, Lakhi? Where do you say there would be some
so
angle on it in helping others, or even going outside of Hem or Hem because she's limited?
So I think what happens is when you're on a very clear path of what you're doing, which is fixing problems, what happens is when you got a very strong intention to do that, all the right people turn up anyway. So Julie's turned up. That's a really good start. So, I knew who Julie was because we were connected on Facebook, but now got into the nooks and crannies of her expertise, which is that she is actually a problem solver in a niche, and the type of thinking and the angle that she's got could be invaluable for probably millions of landlords out there who are probably pulling their hair out at the moment. So I think definitely we need about how many? About 50,000 Julie Fords in this world, because there's not enough Fords in the world, because it's actually the issues that people are having now are actually on the the way most things put it, which is a problem away from a sort of one-day paycheck. If it doesn't come in, they're going to have a massive problem. So from that point of view, I think definitely Julie and I think we'll have a chat, and I don't really have the ability to every single thing, and the more experts we get in niches, I'll also introduce her to a couple of other people, Julie, which could make all that difference to you. So there's also Charles Anderson who works with us, who's a specialist in rehousing tenants as well, who can't afford their tenants, who are on benefits. So that tracks the exit for the tenant, and it allows the landlord to then remarket the property for letting without that becoming a problem for the landlord, but it bridges the gap. So I think that team of Julie, Charles, and a few other specialists that we work with is a sort of expert panel that we'll be adding on to the Facebook group. So if we can get you on here as maybe regular commentators or experts, we set this group up for free basically. So anybody calls me, I actually make it a point to just drop everything and give them my time. So it is a 24-hour service. That's why I've got a few bags under my eyes at the moment, because I actually like to sort of work 24 hours. It's a bit boring otherwise. Yeah. Okay. So I run my own rocket ship, which is actually 24 hours anyway.
Okay. Julie, that question goes back to you. I know you're working and operating within Hemel Hempstead. Before I ask you to answer that question, got a shout out from an A&B Videos, I think, or a company that's watching us YouTube. They like what we are talking about. That's very good. And we've also got Cameron, who asked the question. He's a sweet young boy we had on yesterday with a lot of energy, a six-pack. So I've got 5 more to get to his stage. He says, I haven't got a credit card. Tell me, should I get one, and what should I do with it? My advice is get one and give it to me, but I can give you a more matured advice from Lakhi Singh in a bit. Julie, what do you got to say to what Lakhi said? And I know you're operating in Hemel Hempstead. Do you think you could probably broaden your service and work with other people who are just as helpful, I would say, and empathetic as you are, because you seem to have a clear business head, but you also seem to have a lot of empathy in you and realize the knock-on effects of what's happening in the present market. So what do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, just because I'm based in Hemel Hempstead doesn't mean I only operate my business in Hemel Hempstead. So because of the nature of what I do, a lot of it is office based. A lot of it I can do like we're doing now. I can do Zoom calls, etc., etc. So I don't physically need to be with tenants and landlords. So I do operate across the UK at the moment. I've got a landlord who's got their property up in Liverpool. I work in central London. I work wherever I need to work, wherever a landlord or a letting agent is that's got a problem. So at the moment, I am pretty flexible in that respect. But it's just, for me, there just seems to be a bit of a barrier. And I think that barrier is communication when it comes to landlords and letting agents. I think when landlords are self-managing and there's a problem with the tenant, they take everything so extremely personally. And instead of looking at it from a business point of view, there is a problem, we need to resolve it. Like, for example, if you don't pay your credit card bill, your credit card company will ring you and ask you, what is the problem? How can we help? When a tenant doesn't pay their rent, the landlord goes, where's my money? I'm going to evict you. It's a completely different mindset. And letting agents are very much the same with regards to, I think, a fear of just picking up the phone and just asking a tenant what is wrong, how can I help, what's the situation? You know, that phone call might be the only phone call that person gets.
Isn't it at the end of the day, isn't the nature of the landlord and the agent about the money, about the business, and isn't that why it's slightly different when you have a tenant who can't pay, not who won't pay, but can't pay? Because obviously you get anomalies. You get tenants who won't pay. That's different. Someone who can't pay, obviously you've got to take into appreciation that the landlord needs that money. If he's managing his property portfolio and each property is a individual unit, a business in its right, if he's managing like a business, it's all right to say he's got, you know, £20,000 cash flow so he can absorb the mortgage payment for that property by paying from the cash flow. But if you really look at it honestly, if that unit has to run efficiently, he needs the money, pay the mortgage. Now, surely it's because of the nature of the relationship. The nature of the relationship of a tenant with the property is it's his abode. It's where he wants his right of peaceful existence. It's his home while he's renting it. But for the landlord, it's an income tool, isn't it? It's an asset. And the landlord, not necessarily out of belligerence, more out of necessity, can't really afford to allow someone to live in the property for more than a certain time, because then the laws around property and the way the properties are managed in the United Kingdom make it necessary for him to be slightly more belligerent, because he doesn't get paid any money from his insurance until he doesn't get rid of the tenant, doesn't give him notice. I mean, isn't the system designed in a way to be very aggressive, and therefore landlords can't afford to be empathetic? Lakhi, what do you say to that first, before we go back to Julie and ask her the answer on that question? Before we do that, we have the question you need to answer. What does Mr. Cameron do with his credit card? Does he give it to me to spend for him, or how should he use his credit? Give him your best financial advice, being that you're from the planet Krypton and you don't need money there, apparently, having superpowers, you don't need to eat.
Okay, so very simple, Cameron. Number one, credit cards really are a tool, not in terms of building up your credit profile. They're not necessarily there to really use it really for your shopping and things like that. But the way you need to use it is really as a business tool. So there's a technique of using it where you take out 2-3 credit cards and you start making small payments from each one and build up your credit, so that the credit companies start offering you 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 pounds of credit over a period of 3 to 6 months.
Wise man, Lakhisingh. A man.
So that if they're giving you money to borrow, and you can borrow it at 0 credit, then technically you've got free money as well if you wanted to use it. but you got to be wise how you use it. So that's something you can build up over 3 months, 6 months, a year. But I wouldn't really use it in reality for actually spending and actually leveraging off it, because it's gonna be more, the cost of actually those credit cards could be quite high if not clever. So
Okay.
that's the first question. The
Okay,
second
yes.
question is around landlords and their cash pots, really, how they're impacted and really how all that works. So I think it is a little bit of a double-edged sword, actually, in terms of this conversation, because on the whole, anybody who's actually a tenant in the property, they're actually just thinking about their day-to-day living and their livelihoods. So it's a very human type situation for them. Whereas for a landlord, the majority of landlords actually, we're doing this for business purposes, at least 95%. You may have some landlords who've got ample money. They're happy to let it go because they're the extra nice, friendly landlord who will give their left arm for people because they're very human in what they do. But I would say the majority actually run it for business purposes. And but I think if they're quite clever and they're quite shrewd, then if they consider the issues of the tenant living in there and they're more empathetic, then there's more likely that they're going to get a resolution by having somebody like Julie there who can actually offset the difference between the business requirement and the human requirement.
Excellent. Okay, that makes a lot of sense there. But we go back to what Mr. Ninder Singh Johal said a few weeks ago. Anybody signing on the dotted line, taking out a loan for the purpose of buying a property that's going to give them cash flow, income, a business, they have to be business-like. So is business-like being aggressive, being sort of non-human in their dealings with a person who's living? It's not like a business, is it? It's not like a restaurant where people come in and eat food and pay you for it, and someone comes along and says, well, I'm going to eat the food, I'm not going to pay you for it, because then you're going to sling them out of your restaurant. Where someone lives in your property, that is their home, their abode, while they're living there. And there is a different mental positioning. And the landlord is somewhat in a position where if they go more than two, I mean, if you look at the terms and the conditions of these contracts, they are quite draconian. Now you're taking out about £200,000 on a loan to buy a Buytolet. You put about £40,000 of a deposit. Now, if you don't pay for 2 months or more, technically the bank can take the property back under the LPA receiver law. That's very draconian for a large amount of investment. And maybe some of these things have to be revised. They need to go back under the drawing board and take them back. And there has to be some more due consideration on these things. But at the moment, we are where we are, just like Donald Trump says, we are where we are. So, Julie, what say you to Lakhi's answer on it? And can they be a perfect balance? And is it just about rehousing people? Can you just rehouse people, and are they happy to be rehoused? And they've got kids.
I think it's a really good point that you're making there about it's a person's home, and I think sometimes that can be lost on a landlord a little bit. But exactly that, it is a business and it has to be run like a business. But it's like with any business, like you use the example, and a good example, but the tenants also need to stand. If they keep going to that restaurant and eating the food and not paying for it, soon that restaurant's going to run out of food and it's not going to be able to provide food. So it's exactly the same way. If the tenant isn't paying the rent and can't pay the rent, soon that property is going to run out because the landlord isn't going to be able to sustain it. So it's an understanding from both parties. And I think that's where, again, communication is so important, because if a landlord approaches a tenant who cannot pay rent and says, look, this is why I need you to pay your rent, because I can't pay a mortgage, therefore the house is going to be taken away from you and it's out of my control. If there was more understanding of the logistics between everything, I think there would be a better structure in regards to keeping people housed, because just rehousing someone isn't resolving the problem. It's just moving it on to somewhere else and giving it another 6 months, and then it's a problem again. We need to get back to the bare bones of what the actual issue is.
Okay, Julie, we need you on again because you've got a wealth of knowledge there, and I think there's lots of topics which are affecting people now as we speak, and it's going to get worse. I think you're the type of person who will have a lot to give back to the audience. We're on 900 plus on as far as our group memberships are concerned. We've got lots of people on YouTube now following us. Lakhi, thank you so much. Julie, thank you so much for your time in the drive time. We have run out of time, we're over time. Julie, you will be invited on again because I think there's lots more for us to learn from you. Lakhi Singh, the property fixer, for tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., 9 a.m. We've got another caller on tomorrow, and we invite everyone to kindly press the dial button and ask the questions yourself. Thank you.